People are obsessing over the Highland cow, and we're going to paint it. So I've included the stencil for the Highland cow in the links below, and then we are going to paint it. But you could use this technique for really any Highland cow picture that you see. It doesn't have to be the one that I've included. But once you've found the picture and you've done tracing, just do some light tracing. You don't want to trace the whole thing. Just kind of notate where the snout is, where the ears, that sort of thing, and the horns. Then you're going to use a large brush. I don't put like the size or the type of brush unless I really feel like you have to be specific to that type of brush, which is very rarely. So, and I want to be able to be versatile to whatever you guys have. I know that art supplies can get expensive, so I try to work around basically the basic tool. So I don't usually pick like a specific brush or anything, but a large brush. In this case, I'm using just a large snap brush by Princeton. You can use a quill brush as well to create those kind of cool effects. And then you want to get your color, which would be a beige or something with a little bit of a yellow undertone. As always, I use Dr. P.H. Martin. That's just my preference when it comes to paints. I love the pigments in it. It's just something that's very easy for me to use. A lot of my students end up using it pretty exclusively, and so much so that I've now become a reseller for them, which only took me 2 years of begging them to let me do that, because I have so many people that use Dr. P.H. Martin now because I use it and love it. And they've started using it, and I'm like, come on, guys, you've got to help me out here. So they finally gave me the resellers license, and it's on my website now. So I'm super excited. But anyways, a beige tone doesn't have to be Dr. P.H. Martin. Any kind of beige, mustardy tone, and I start with a really, really light shade of it, which is pretty common in watercolor to just start with the lighter shades. It's wet on dry, and I want to mimic the stroke of the brush to the direction of the fur. So as you can see, it's almost like you're brushing the hair. If you're brushing your hair, you're not going to go against the way your hair grows out. You're going to brush against your hair in the same direction. So same kind of concept when it comes to this. Start with the lighter colors, and then just start working in the darker shades. And then obviously I have the darker around the snout. And this is, where the bend of the nose is. You can go to town with this, and I do end up spending quite a bit of time on the fur, which is fine. It's just pretty much all you're seeing. And to create that kind of shaggy look, which is what I think makes the Highland cow super adorable, is that their face is covered, their eyes are covered, and they just kind of have this really fluffy, cute look to them. You do want to spend some time with the fur, because if you don't spend that time with the fur, you're kind of just gonna miss out on the point. So I'm just adding in the darker shades here. And as you can see, even using the big brush for the smaller little brush strokes as well. I had my students ask me recently at one of my classes that I was teaching, what brush do I use for this and what brush do I use for that? And I told them it really comes down to your own trial and error, because for me, I tend to use 1 to 2 brushes per painting, if even that. Sometimes, as you can see, a lot of this is I'm still on the same brush. And other artists will use a different brush for almost every single part of their painting. So the idea is to find what works for you. So trial and error, try using one brush, see if you feel like you need to go to a smaller one. I don't have a bunch of different types of brushes. I pretty much just have the quill and the snap brushes, and that's pretty much all I use. So it works for me. So, but you want the larger brush just because at least in the beginning we're you want to do bigger chunks of fur, and it's just going to become tedious if you try to do that with a smaller brush. And you want to create that base color as well. So the larger brush comes in handy for that. When you come to the smaller ones, you can keep using the same brush like I am, or switch to a smaller brush, whichever you're more comfortable with. And then I also put that same base color over the snout and did a little bit of the nostrils in a darker color. I didn't put details in yet. I just want to create that base color and the shading first before I go in and add some details. So that's the key to watercolor, is that you have to create this kind of layered. If you've ever worked with Photoshop or any kind of photo editing or created any kind of graphics, and you see the layers like in Photoshop or whatever there's layers to the artwork. It's the same concept with watercolor. So if you come from the world of graphic design or Photoshop, this will be a really easy technique to understand, or really easy metaphor to understand, I guess. Just creating layers. So you have to create that base layer first. The head I did a little bit lighter than the body, and then you go in and you add more brush strokes to get those more details in, and then you wait for that to dry, and then you go ahead and you add more details. I've noticed with my students, this is going to be more of an intermediate level. My students, one of the two things I always have to remind them of is, one, you have to wait for it to dry, and two, you have to use water, which you think sounds redundant or silly, but it's a very common mistake for people to do early on when they're learning watercolor, is they get impatient and they don't wait for the painting to dry. And I know that's specifically to my classes as well, because they have 2 hours to paint a painting, so they feel like, oh, I want to get this done, even though I've timed it where they can wait for it to dry. I literally had to take paintings away from people because they just cannot wait for it to dry. We do have blow dryers available. I'm not a fan of the blow dryer. I just like it to dry naturally, but I'm very good at finding other things to do. I have very easy squirrel syndrome. If I'm waiting for something to dry, that'll be my time to go and make some coffee, or go clean something, or start a different painting. If I'm doing orders, I'm very often doing 2 or 3 paintings at a time, because I start on one, wait for that to dry, move to the next one, wait for that so I don't have to wait. I'm just moving on to the next painting. So waiting for it to dry before you go on to the next layer, because you don't want the bleeding happening all over your painting either. And using using water very often when you're painting, I see the brush is creating that kind of staggered look, and you don't want that, because you want that kind of smooth brush strokes. I mean, there's times you do want that. Today is not one of them. So if you're finding that you are struggling to get those nice clean brush strokes like I'm getting right now, add more water to your brush. I'm constantly dipping my brush in water and dipping it back in the paint, and you don't see that here because I edit that out. I want to create it more, I guess, smoother viewing experience, so I edit out all the moments that I'm dipping my brush in the water. But it's very, very often, and pretty much every time you see a little bit of a skip in my movement, is when I'm dipping my brush in water. So brush in water, brush in paint. You don't want to have a dry brush, at least not in this case. So I'm also working in, as you can see, there's going to be like the lighter streaks of the fur. The way I do that is by creating the darker paint around the lighter streaks. So, you can see, that he has this kind of lighter length of fur there. That's because I put the darker streaks around it. So use the paper and the lightness of the paper to create that. It's working in reverse if you come from the world of oil or acrylic, kind of working in reverse, because with oil and acrylic, you add those highlights at the end because you can layer paint. Since you can't do that with watercolor, you are having to kind of think ahead with what you need to do. So this is my favorite part, just because I think their snouts are so cute. But I'm adding the darker fur around his snout to make that, or her snout, I don't know, to make that kind of pop. And you can really see the snout now. It's super cute. I'm also adding some more shading into the face. She has one eye peeking out, and I don't want to focus on the eye too much, so it's really just a little bit of a dark, you kind of see the shadow of the eye happening. The other eye is covered by her fur, so uh, there's really no definition when it comes to the eye here. So I'm also adding in the darker shades underneath where the flower is going to go, because the flowers would create this shadow underneath the flower from the lighting, so you can see that as well. And now I'm adding in the darker colors for the snout. This is I think when we're getting to that point where you're really starting to see it come together. You're like, oh, I could totally see it now, and it's just really just layering and layering and layering the paints, as you can see. I'm kind of working with the same amount of water and paint throughout the whole thing. Not a lot of paint, not a lot of water. It's kind of in the middle, because I want to have control over the colors and the paints. Here we go with the eye. Just a little dark shadow there to create that, where the eye is going to be. Nothing too much, just to say, oh, there's an eye kind of peeking out underneath there. I had one of my students who took this class, and then she took my other class with painting the lighthouse, which I thought was a much easier class, the lighthouse one, because we did a lot of tracing. But she said that she found the Highland cow a lot easier because she had more creative freedom with it, because there wasn't a lot of, this is where the lighthouse goes, this is where this goes. So I was really surprised to hear that, which just goes to show that I'm constantly learning as well, and wanting to learn, but also I'm learning what my students are needing from me as well. So hopefully that continues, and I can continue to get better at teaching and showing techniques. So if you have feedback ever where you're like, yeah, you said this one was going to be hard and it wasn't, or this one was supposed to be easy and it wasn't, or anything at all that can help me better help you guys, please let me know. I am all ears. So now we're doing the horn. I'm using sepia, and I didn't put that on the screen, that I actually have a tiny bit of black just to make this a little bit more ashy. This sepia is already kind of a ashy brown anyways. It has like black undertone to it, but I really wanted to just have this kind of brownish grayish color to it. So that was a sepia with just tiny bit of gray, watered down black, just to create that kind of ashy look to it. So now we're doing the flowers. The flowers was a whole different animal. I think this is why I was saying this one's going to be a little bit harder for people, is because if you haven't taken any floral classes, or you don't know the floral, then this can be more difficult. But I did let my students trace the florals, so it I think was easier in that sense. It was a sip and paint, so I couldn't teach people how to paint florals and a cow at the same time. They really just wanted to paint this Highland cow, so they did some tracing. But I highly encourage you to use your own floral technique to add. I like this dusty rose color with the browns myself. You could do whatever color that you like. My students did all sorts. Somebody did blue. It was really pretty. Some did like some yellow sunflowers, which was really pretty. So you could definitely do whatever kind of flower you want. I'm going with a loose watercolor type floral. I just didn't want it to be perfect flowers sitting on top of her crown there. So I just wanted to create kind of this, muted floral look. Something simple. And I love these dusty rose, dusty pink colors in general. I did my daughter's nursery in this dusty rose and beiges and stuff. Really popular, like the boho style. So that's what I was going for with this. But you can, of course, do whatever you want. You can even skip the flowers if you don't want to put the flowers. I don't think anybody in my class skipped the flowers. I think everybody did flowers. They just did different types of flowers. So, and all different colors. So as you can see, I don't even know what flowers these are. I mean, I'm really not trying to paint a specific flower. I just wanted to do some petals, some colors. And I'm using the same color. I'm just adding more brown or more pink, or just kind of create different variations of the color. So all in all, this one took me, I want to say this probably took me about 45 minutes to paint. I'm trying to remember what the original video was. I want to say it was about 45 minutes to paint. Obviously, it's down to about 19 minutes here, but it's because I edit out quite a bit of the video and speed through some of it. That just gets a little bit tedious. So it took me about 45 minutes. I'm on the faster side of painting, so if you are painting this, and I think my class. Oh, we did for my class. I gave them 3 hours to paint this, and they all used up the entire 3 hours. So don't expect to get to this through this one quickly. It took them a while to do. Um, like I said, I'm a very fast painter, and I paint a lot, so I'm just used to it. And one of the things that people say to me, they're like, "Oh, but mine doesn't look anything like yours." I have a sheet that I pass out at my sip and paints, and the number one thing it says on there, it's a sheet. It's called "How to Have a Successful Night." And the number one thing on there, the first thing it says is comparison is a thief of joy. And it's true. And when I first did that, I'm like, oh, people are going to think this is cheesy. But I was really surprised by the feedback I got. People were really happy to hear that. And they were constantly reminding their neighbors whenever they start to compare themselves. Oh, this isn't looking like yours, or I like yours. And like, what's number one? So this is my reminder to you. If yours doesn't look like mine, hey, maybe it looks better. Hopefully it looks better. Um, First of all, mine didn't come out the way I wanted it to either. It never does. But don't compare yours to mine, because I paint well over 400 paintings a year. I do this full time. This is my full-time job, my full-time business. So, I definitely have a lot of experience, even though I haven't been doing watercolor for very long, since 2000, so 5 years. I've been painting my entire life. So definitely don't compare yourself to my work. The idea is that each painting you grow and you learn something new, and you learn something new about yourself as well as the craft, and the next one will get better. And watercolor is truly one that is experience driven. It's not one where I can I can teach you everything, and then you go and you apply it, and then you're going to nail it the first time. It is all about trial and error, and getting used to the holding the brush and how much water. All of this comes with trial and error, and if you stick with it, it is truly worth it, because some of my students that have been with me for a while, that have been taking all of my classes, and just seeing their growth since they've started taking classes with me, it's just been so rewarding for me, because I just get to see how much that practice really does help. So hopefully you come away from this feeling like you've got something from it. If you did, then goal accomplished, right? So as of now, I'm adding in some final touches. I kind of flew through the floral part of it. Like I said, that was just more of a loose watercolor. And if you don't want to do the florals, don't do the florals. But I'm just adding some more shadows. My paintings tend to be very contrasty, so that's what happens with my work. But that's just my style. It's just what happened from how I paint. So let me know what you think, and look forward to hearing you in the next video.